On a beautiful afternoon when there's so much awesome, great content out there. But I'm sure it's not me, it's the hot tamales and the fact that maybe Latinas have $1.6 trillion in purchasing power, maybe one of those. So I have to give you guys, I have a confession for you guys. So when I started putting together this presentation, it actually was really hard. You know, I pitched this probably like about a year ago because South by Southwest makes you do this way in advance. And I was like, okay, this is something that's super relevant to what I do all the time. I'm in Latin media. I'm constantly getting asked to go into focus groups. I've written a book that's actually taught universities around the country about Latina identity. And I just see people get it wrong all the time, right? And so I was like, okay, let's do this. But once I started diving deep and started getting into my talk, I was like, man, this is really hard. It's so hard. And so I was like looking at Nielsen studies and Ad Age reports, and I was interviewing Latino marketers and influencers and like my grandma, and was like, okay guys, what do you think? How do you market to Latinas? And everybody had a different answer. Somebody was like, family. Latinas love family. Just put family in there, you got it. And somebody was like, all right, just throw in some like music. They love music. And I was like, okay guys, you're not getting the point. And so, but all anybody could really agree was that this was actually very hard. And it is hard because the Latina is the most fragmented demographic out there. Right, so she's black, she's white, she could be Spanish speaking, not Spanish speaking, from about 15 different countries, different levels of acculturation. And so I finally was like, I have an idea, I've got it. I figured out what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna hire some mariachis. I'm gonna hire mariachis and a margarita machine, and we're just gonna have fun. And they won't know, they're not gonna be on me, right? They're gonna not figure me out. Luckily though, the good people at South by Southwest were like, you can't have mariachis, I really asked, and they're like, you can't have a margarita machine. So instead I have hot tamales. But it was good that they didn't let me use these gimmicks, which are so easy to fall into with this market. And I'm Latina myself, and I was doing it to myself. I was like, margaritas. But then I had to dig deep, right? I had to actually do the work and figure out what to do. And the good news is I came up with about 3 different things. One is I put myself in the mind of the marketer, and I got into the challenge that if there's any marketers out there that you guys face when trying to speak to the Latina. Secondly, I realized, which I did to myself, that while gimmicks can be okay, it's sort of fun to have sombreros and all of that, like, you know, it's not inherently bad, you have to have good content or it's just not gonna fly, right? And third, it actually brought me back to the reason that I decided to do this, and it's because I've been stereotyped myself. So I'm gonna tell you guys my story. And that's a slide that shows you that I'm gonna tell you my story. So I actually am from San Antonio, which is about 90 miles south of here. And I'm Mexican American. I was born there. My mom was born there. My grandparents were born there. And my great grandparents were born there. So we've been here since this country used to be Mexico. Now, one huge stereotype that people have about Latinas is that there's a sort of an immigrant story. And that's a super valid experience. It just happens to not be mine. So right away, people assume all kinds of things, that I have a grandma that lives in Mexico, that I speak perfect Spanish, which I don't. I had to take a lot of classes to kind of get to my mediocrity, which I'm pretty proud of. But growing up in San Antonio was really great because it's just really neat when they talk about the sort of bicultural and bicultural Latina. San Antonio is like that. It's like about, 70% is Hispanic, maybe even more. So it's a really neat way to grow up. You sort of are fluid. You'll have a quinceañera and you'll go to the prom. You'll have Doritos and you'll have bean and cheese tacos, right? And it's sort of not that big of a deal. So it really wasn't until I came to university and actually went to UT here, in Austin, that I started really questioning my identity. And it's mostly because then I sort of became the minority. And all of a sudden, this is more the demographic of the rest of the country, and my friends and I would joke, Austin is like the rest of the country. Everything south is actually Mexico. And I started taking Chicano literature classes, and you sort of just discover your identity, right, when you're in college. Probably by far the biggest thing that happened to me when I was in college is that I saw this in the bookstore, Latina magazine. I had never really heard that term Latina. When I grew up, we didn't, maybe I was Hispanic, maybe I was like Chicana if I wanted to be like badass, but I really wasn't Latina. But when I saw this spoke to me in so many different ways. I had never sort of seen myself in any sort of mainstream publications, media, and it wasn't that I necessarily look exactly like Jennifer Lopez, but I really identified. It was a beautiful magazine. It talked about, the fashion and, beauty and all that, but it was also culturally relevant. And I was so inspired that I actually moved to New York City and got a job at the magazine. Now, when I moved to New York City, that was totally different. I don't know where you guys are from around the country, but I had this very like Texican, upbringing. And so my identity, what I thought Latina was Mexican Americans. And so when I went there to Latina, there was the Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and Venezuelans, and some were black and some were white, and it was kind of a total head trip. And I was like, holy smokes, this is amazing. And even though we weren't all the same, there was still a big familiarity there, right? I could see myself in our shared culture. And at the magazine, we had a shared, ambition, a shared purpose, and that really was to empower and celebrate the Latina. But then I left Latina magazine and I wanted to work in more mainstream publications, and so I worked at Glamour, I worked at In Style, I worked at Woman's Day. But what happened, actually, when I would go work at these mainstream publications is oftentimes I would find that I would be the only Latina in the room. And so I became basically the expert on all things Latina. So, one time I remember my editor, they were doing a fashion spread on Argentinian tango. And about 20 people looked at me and they were like, what do you think, Robyn? And I should have said, I've never been to Argentina and I don't know how to tango. But instead of saying that, I said, you know what? I think that's muy bueno. I think that would be perfecto. And so I began to really perpetuate my own stereotypes. And so it got really confusing, right? And what happens is that every 10 years, a census comes out and people just go up in arms because they see statistics like the ones that I showed you guys before, that by the end of this year, 1 in 3 kids born in America will have a Latin mom. That the average age for Latinos is 27, which is such a, that millennial coveted demographic, and that we have that $1.6 trillion in purchasing power. So if the Hispanics were their own country, we'd have like the 14th largest global economy. It's insane. And so a lot of people expect stuff from us, and then sometimes I feel like we perpetuate our own stereotypes. Because I had all of this sort of cultural confusion, I decided to write a book. And so I wrote that book. And it's called Borderline Personalities, a new generation of Latinas dish on sex, sass, and cultural shifting. And I co-edited it with a friend, and we got together about 20 different Latinas and said, you know what, everybody wants to know who we are. Instead of them stereotyping us, why don't we tell people, give them a calling card, so to speak. And so there's all kinds of stories in there for being, religious or being gay, anything, saying this is who the new Latina is. And one thing that I learned from really writing this book was that, Latinas, that we're not statistics, right? And that we're not stereotypes. Because what happens is that everyone has a different identity or idea of what a Latina is. So I'm going to ask you guys, when you hear the word Latina, what comes to your mind? Just say the first thing. Racism, kids, stereotypes, right? Hot, sexy. So some of those. And the thing is, some stereotypes could be good, right? So sometimes people could say Latinas are very family-oriented, Latinas are very sexy. There's nothing in and of itself wrong with being sexy. It's just that it's often just one perspective, right? Like we're sort of three-dimensional people. And so what happens is then that gets perpetuated in ads like that. So that really happened. That was Tecate, and they thought they were being really clever. I'm sure they were sort of like, in a boardroom, and they're like, oh my God, nothing hotter than a hot Latina. So they came up with this ad, which they pulled fairly quickly. And then pretty recently, Summer's Eve, we call it the thong incident, they came up with an ad which was just bad to begin with. It was a talking vagina. And they said, this is gonna be an amazing ad. So this is the Latina talking vagina I'm gonna show you.
Ay, 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 another layover? After traveling all day, you expect me to feel good? Seriously? I mean, sure. I perform miracles, or like that whole giving birth thing. Yeah, that is all me, boo. But even I need a little help from time to time. Like Summer's Eve cleansing cloths. They're individually wrapped, so you can just stash them in your purse, and we are good to go. Oh, and next time you shower, show me a little love with Summer's Eve cleanse and wash. That's all I ask. Well, that and you trash that tacky leopard thong. Esa tanga es la cosa más chabacano que he visto en mi vida. Y sabes que lo he visto prácticamente todo. Summer's Eve cleanse and wash and cloths. Hail to the V.
Thank you. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's just shocking in so many ways. And this is recent, right? So, I get here and I'm like, dude, it's 2015. What is going on? The thing is, there's so many stereotypes that aren't being told, right? So what if I was to tell you that Latinas are wildly entrepreneurial? Latinas start businesses at 6 times the rate as not Latinas. What if I was to tell you that Latinas were totally like eco-warriors, care about the environment? Latinas actually care more about global warming than the general population. You never hear that, right? I never hear that stereotype. They eat, we eat organic food. Latinas are actually really health conscious. The #1 Google search term for Latinas is anything to do with health. Healthy recipes, fitness, things about their family, diabetes, but those are things that you just don't see. And so why? Where are these stories and where are these sort of good stereotypes? I think it's because we're asking the wrong questions. Because we're so caught up in the statistics, we're so excited about all that money, right? We're like, how can I market to Latinas? But the question that we really need to be asking is how can we connect with Latinas, okay? So I'm gonna show you guys how. First of all, it's content over cliche. So our good friends over at Cosmo for Latinas, they do an amazing job. And it's actually my friend that we did Borderline Personalities, a book together. She's the editor-in-chief. And so they actually studied, they did a focus group on one of their issues, and this was their highest rated story in one issue. So it's called Sexier in Seconds. There's nothing really overtly Latina about it, right? So they didn't put any confetti, they didn't make any like cheesy Spanglish, but it just has a really good promise. I mean, who doesn't want to be sort of sexier in seconds, right? You're gonna look good, it's gonna solve your problems. But they backed up with amazing content. So in there, all of the makeup experts actually work on Latina skin. So there's people that work on Jessica Alba, people that work on Sofia Vergara, people that work on Zoe Saldana. And then everything is hyper specific to Latinas. So if you read that, they talk about hyperpigmentation, which is it's sort of darkened skin. That's something that Latinas get often. They talk about acne, they talk about different kind of hair types and skin types. So this did really well. It did 92% out of a possible 100. And it was because of that specificity, that cultural relevance. They were like, I love this. This is not a story that you would probably see in Allure. It's probably not a story that you would see in Glamour. And they totally ate this up. Now this is a story in the same issue that did really poorly. It's called Which Telenovela Star Are You? So if you guys don't know, telenovelas are Spanish soap operas, and they often have these sort of archetype characters. So one of them is like the ugly duckling, the Betty La Fea, who's gonna be, like Cinderella, she's gonna blossom and get the guy. One of them is the vixen that's gonna steal your husband, and one of them is sort of like the meddling mother-in-law. This actually did really poorly amongst readers. And what they said is, one, it was forced, it was contrived, and it didn't align with their daily lives. Because Latinas, like anyone else, are busy, right? So they want you to solve their problems. One quick aside, if you guys are doing anything in Spanish, please be sure and get a professional to really proofread that. That might sound like the most Captain Obvious thing to say, but Cosmo for Latinas actually has a person on staff that vets all their Spanish, because way too often people don't get it right. So for instance, last year, the Obama administration, they launched their Obamacare health site in Spanish, and probably because they were in a hurry, some of it was actually translated by a computer. It was a complete disaster. It was like really weird verb tenses. And in one crazy instance, the word premium, like insurance premium, the computer couldn't figure it out, so it actually put the word prima, which is a Spanish cousin. That's totally different. So if you have a high insurance premium, that's really different than like a cousin that likes to get high. You know what I'm saying? So, and this happens, and this is, Obama's a good guy, but I guess maybe just too busy to fact check. So the second thing, if you want to market to Latinas and get it right, is make them the stars. About 2/3 of Latinas report that they don't see themselves enough in advertising. Their exact quote is, Latinas like me. Now we know that Latinas are wildly different, right? We have white Latinas, black Latinas, and everything in between. And so oftentimes the way to sort of fix this problem is actually to put real people, if you can, in campaigns. AT&T did this. They were launching a mobile plan. And the campaign was targeting millennials, and it was hashtag between two worlds. And it spoke to this idea that you work between two worlds, you're bicultural, and they cast a bunch of real world people to talk about, and it sort of felt almost more like a documentary than a commercial, and it did really, really well for them. Another trend that we're continuing to see is using influencers, you know what I mean? So people that are on YouTube and that have big followings instead of celebrities. I feel like Latinas really respond to that. Next, you have to connect and serve. So Latinas are wildly, wildly digital. They are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram more than non-Latinas. Latinas have more smartphones than non-Latinas, and they're actually on websites looking for lifestyle content. So whether it's parenting, whether it's beauty, health, relationships, they visit websites more than non-Latinas. And so Procter & Gamble, I want to call out, 'cause I call out some people that don't do good stuff, but when they do it, I'll give them some credit. So they actually have a really great campaign. It's called Orgullosa. So that means pride in Spanish, and they actually launched a site. And as you can see, so it's a site aimed at Latinas. It's in English and Spanish, and they just give all kinds of different content, whether it's parenting and health. And you can see it doesn't really have a lot of ads. It's a little bit of a soft sell. But I think that they're doing a great job because I think they're really invested in community, and I feel like that will sort of pay back in spades. Because the thing about service and things like that, whether you're a brand person or you own a company out there, really investing in the community and feeling, Latinas really just want to be seen, right? They want to be seen visibly, and they want to be seen in the sense of people get them. You know what I mean? So if you just put a little bit, whether you are maybe you're just a mom and pop and you're a jewelry maker, even putting out a blog, doing little conferences and little things that show that you care, this, Latinas are very brand loyal, and I feel like that will serve you well. So we're gonna get back to stereotypes because we sort of had some fun with our talking vaginas, but it's actually pretty serious. So the National Hispanic Media Coalition, they did a study, and they showed that just 60 seconds of an image can stereotype you, which means that people actually will change their perception of Latinas, right? Good or bad. So when you see something like that, it makes sense that about 60% in a recent study thought that the word maid and the word Latina were interchangeable. They thought they were synonyms. So it's not like I want to rag on, this is, they have an all-female cast of Devious Maids. People think it's very funny and clever. And it's executive produced by Eva Longoria. It's not that stereotypes are necessarily bad, it's just that they don't tell the entire story, right? And so my purpose of really being here today is to challenge you guys as marketers, as messengers, as visionaries, as leaders in the community, as neighbors, to really, let's create some new stereotypes, right? If we're gonna do it, let's do something different. So I'm gonna start that hashtag moguls not maids, and I'm gonna turn you guys on to some pretty cool people. So this is an adorable girl. I kind of have a girl crush on her. Her name is Carla Gallardo. So she is a total badass. She's 32. She went to Stanford Business School. She worked at Goldman Sachs, and she said, I want to start a business that matters. So she looked in her closet, like we all do, and was like, I don't like anything I have in here. There's like nothing to wear. And she realized that she just had a bunch of cheap sort of throwaway clothing from like Forever 21 or something. And she'd been inspired because she's from Ecuador, and she'd just gone home to visit her family, and she was walking in all of these artisan markets. And so she was looking at people making alpaca scarves, and she was looking at people make like leather bags, and she said, why don't people buy these heirloom quality things? And she said, maybe they're just too expensive. And so she actually created a business and said, I think there might be a business here. And so she created a business that is direct from market to consumer. It's online, and it's called Cuyana, which means to love in Quechua, which is a native Ecuadorian language. And actually, founders really loved that idea because she raised $1.7 million. And since she launched in 2013, she's actually, her business has grown about 10 times. So she's a total rock star. So here's another amazing story. So instead of people thinking that Latinas might be in the kitchen or as gardeners, this is Amelia Ceja and her daughter, Dalia. So Amelia is from Mexico. She was a migrant worker. She came to work in the vineyards in Sonoma and Carneros. And she worked there, in the 60s growing up, and she actually met her husband picking grapes when she was 12. So they actually saved their money. They went to university. Her husband went to wine school, whatever that's called, at UC Davis, and she went to marketing school. They saved all of their money picking grapes, and they bought their own plot of land in 1983. And they kept selling to other people because it's really expensive. And then they actually, in 2001, launched their own label. So now Ceja Vineyards is the first Mexican-American owned vineyard in the country. And she really still wants to change these demographics. So if you look in the vineyards, about almost 100% of people that pick grapes are Mexican-American or Mexican immigrants. The people that own the vineyards, it's about 1%. But she's trying really hard to change that. She's raised about $500,000 and she gives it to her farm workers so they can go to school, so they can then move on and buy their own crops and really reap the benefit of all the hard work that they do. And instead of sex pots, which is definitely a stereotype that we have seen before, and again, it's a good one. Who doesn't want to be sexy? It's just a story that we already know. Like, we get it, right? Sofia Vergara, we get it. Salma Hayek, we get it. Why don't we have more stereotypes like Sonia Sotomayor? So she is the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice. She grew up in the Bronx. She grew up in a housing project. Her dad died when she was 9. But despite all of that, she still went to Princeton, and then she went to Yale Law School. So when she got there, when she was at Yale Law School, someone actually came up to her and said, "You're only here because of affirmative action, right?" And she was so pissed she didn't say anything till the next day. Now he was really surprised because he thought, oh my God, she's gonna have a fiery Latina, temper and she's gonna tell me off. But she waited a whole day and then she went and found that guy and she said, my goodness, it's gonna get me all choked up. She said, you maybe open the door for me. Maybe affirmative action really opened the door, right? Maybe that's a legit thing. But I totally ran with that. And when she graduated from Princeton, she was at the top of her class. Obviously, she's gone on to do amazing things, but she really is proud of being Latina. She's proud of being a woman, and she really advocates for people that she considers that are marginalized, right? So, she's a very liberal voice on a much-needed conservative court. She fights for affirmative action. She fights for healthcare. She fights for birth control. And she said, the Latina in me burns like an ember, and that's really my fuel. So, that's sort of my talk. There's a lot to go through about how to market to this, and we can definitely all open up to a Q&A. But I just really challenge you guys to create new stereotypes, and I guarantee you, if you do create new stereotypes and tell new stories, you definitely will find your market. So thank you very much.